she is not only building this beautiful movement where she gets to impact women all around the world, but she is really the embodiment, making her life work really magnetic. One of the things that I was thinking before entering into the conversation is like the quality of women that we get to attract, it match the quality of the work that we have done in ourselves. And when I see your life work, Juliana, I just get amazed. And when I reach out back to you, because I think when you do an amazing work, you attract people, opportunities and situations. I reach out to you, I was like, I want to have this conversation with this woman. She's so magnetic. I just felt really raw through your live work. And from there, we choose the date, and right now we are here. But Juliana, if you can introduce yourself, let us know who you are and what got you here. What did you, like I mentioned before, press record, why did you choose to help women in this specific area?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to have this opportunity to have this conversation with you. I think it's a really important conversation for women to have around investing specifically. I know that there's a lot of threads around wealth building for women, and the more you know that you don't know. So I'm kind of in this place of like, oh my gosh, there's still so much I don't know. Um, I think it's a really good place to be, and it takes a level of humility, I think, to be able to say that you know a lot, and there's still a lot of things that you don't know. Um, so just real quickly, I was born in Eastern Europe. My parents emigrated when I was my sister and I were I think 8 and 9. I lived in Austria for a year, did the whole refugee camp thing for a little bit. Learned English. English is not my first language. Um, I've always just really had an incredible admiration and respect for what my parents did, which was essentially to leave everything that they knew and treasured, their family more specifically, behind, so that my sister and I could have a good education. And so my sister has a master's degree in economics, and I chose to get a degree in mechanical engineering. So that's kind of where we started. I mean, just to like fast forward a little bit, and then I built a 20-year career in the energy industry, working globally for some of the biggest kind of multinational companies, oil and gas companies, most recently on setting the strategy for new energies for one of the big multinational oil and gas companies that you would know if I mentioned. I won't. So when I started working, I've always had just, I think, being a child of being an immigrant, being a child of immigrants, political refugees is probably more specifically how I would describe who I am, or who my past. I was just always keenly aware of money, and money was really the only conversation that I think there was some tension in our home, around around money. And my dad was quite frugal with respectfully so, and I just always knew, I had decided very early on that like money was not going to be a thing that was going to be a big thing in my life. Now it still is a big thing in my life, just in a different way. But I started investing very early on, and I don't know how I knew to do that. I've always been, I think, just again, part of my background and part of being displaced at a very early age, kind of like small T trauma. I would say that I did a lot of work to work through, and still am working through. But for me, money represented security and safety. And so it was just super, super important for me to secure my safety and security. And the way I knew to do that was um, become anti-fragile, to become, independent, to make my own money, to not have to um,
Ask.
ask, not have to worry, not have to, like, money was not going to be the thing that stopped me from living the life that I wanted to live. And so I started investing quite early on, as soon as I um, started my career after university. Um, and then I just kind of, I've always invested. I've always invested. I always was a super had really high awareness of the kind of roles that I took on and which roles were more more appreciated, let's say. So I always had a leading business role in companies that I worked for. I always negotiated hard for stock options and bonuses and raises, and like I was my own advocate in all the things. I put my name up for promotions. I moved to Europe. I lived in Asia briefly for work. I did things that I think for a lot of people would have been very uncomfortable, but I always decided to. I worked in the field, up in like uh, middle of nowhere, at a power plant at a very young age, like in my 20s, and in a very and always kind of in like very male dominated environments, and just kind of I was just very tough, I guess, in terms of I belong here and had really high self-confidence in
Yeah.
myself early on. And so that allowed me to have a career that paid me really well. And then I was very smart with what I did with that money. Right. And so I see a lot of women in my field, kind of in the online space now, who are um, earning like incredible amounts of money. I mean, assuming that is true, I have no reason to believe that it's not, but um, just incredible. Like, I mean, mind blowing. And so there's lots of celebration of that and conversation around that. I just don't see the conversations at the level that I would love to see them at around investing and what we're doing with that money and how we're actually deploying our capital to make a difference, but also to get a return on that investment in a very practical sense. So that's a bit of
Okay.
a story. And then I just because of the choices that I made early on in life, it paid dividends as I'm in my 40s, late 40s now. And um, I had kids pretty late in life, and it allowed me to basically, pull the plug on my career. And I did the work to disentangle myself, my identity from my career and my position and my title. And that was a whole thing I had to do around that's not who I am. I got to reinvent myself, but I also had the financial backing to be able to do that. And so now I invest I'm an angel investor. I have nearly seven figures in angel investments. I'm an advisor to startups, really incredible companies. And I run a uh, startup initially I envisioned it to be a mastermind, but it's really more of a mentorship for women who are looking to get into alternative investments like private equity and venture capital and like angel investments and private credit and all the things that are not public markets. So I do have a part of my portfolio in public markets, but I just have a deep passion and appreciation for the world of private markets and supporting founders and investing in the next thing. Like I just made an investment last week in a female founded venture capital firm that invests at the intersection of kind of pivotal life stages, women's pivotal life stages. So it's caregiving, it's health tech and like femtech and financial health for women and their families. I was at an investor meeting yesterday for half the day that was on another company that is looking to create a platform where 51% of the population can flourish by 2051, kind of like the answer to the social dilemma. I have six figures in that business. And it's just like, it brings tears to my eyes to be able to know that my investment, my money is actually
Working for you.
making, not just working for me in terms of like getting a return on my investment. Like that is important to me. This is not philanthropy.
Yeah.
Um, but that I can back founders and uh, general managers of venture capital firms who are doing really incredible things in the world. Um, so yeah, I just think there's this whole opportunity that most women don't see themselves playing in because it's a very male dominated world still, and the language can be a bit off-putting,
Mhm.
and it can be very intimidating. to play in that space. But I just said, like, I'm going to figure this out, and I did. And so that's a bit of, yeah, to answer your a very long-winded way of answering your question.
I just love it so much, and I'm gonna digest it right here. I'm just gonna dissect it a little bit here because I really love the fact that you mentioned I well in my back in my house the conversation about money was not like speaking like hey when it was just like a contracting kind of no well open conversation, and you were able to shift that into put or put that seed in yourself is saying, you know what, this money is going to actually it's going to be part of my life, but I'm going to take it in a different route. And I think that is really important, especially with the programmation that we are coming from or childhood or with the people that we surround ourselves with. By you deciding, I think that it shows so much about not only who you are, but right now, like you mentioned as well, the decisions that you made that that had allowed you to move to where you are right now. Not only like we mentioned, putting the money now to work for you, but also to be becoming more of who you are, this woman who's helping others. And I have to confess, because this language is kind of like for me, it's kind of well, I know about investments, but the way that you speak, I do believe, Juliana, and mark my words, that you are creating a new whole paradigm for all the women online. Because yes, we can have the 50, 100K, or even they're women doing $1 million a month, or you name it, but we don't talk about this. We don't have this kind of conversations because the language, like you mentioned, sometimes is kind of intimidated, or, and I have to say it here as well, sometimes we went through experiences that were not that pleasant when investments, and we don't want to touch that anymore
Yeah.
because the bad experience makes sense. But we have to understand that actually, if even if we had an experience no that was not pleasant, maybe it was coming to us because we were not well informed. But by you coming here online, you are creating this new paradigm, and I'm really excited because I know many of us, including myself, we want to learn a lot. And not only gonna learn, we're gonna turn, like you mentioned, all the money that we're receiving through our life work, and put it into a new way of moving this energy. I think it's also
Yeah.
understanding how money is moved, how money can operate in different ways. And this I'm really true for this paradigm. And I do believe as well that you are also the way that you explain it, even if I'm not aware, and I have to confess here, of all the terms, the way that you explain it, it sounds digestible. It sounds more, it sounds like it's possible for me, because the way that some men explain it, or it's kind of, their language is kind of rough, and I don't want it to listen. But when you're coming here, and I know, like you mentioned, you did a lot of work and you're still doing a lot of work in yourself, the way that you show up and the way that you display this is so nurturing. Is it just get to, it's the way that I felt it was really open to receive, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think it's really important for women to feel safe,
Yeah.
confident in having conversations around their own money and in understanding different ways of investing. And I think the danger becomes when we have this thought that it's too complicated, or we don't have time to figure it out, and so someone else is better equipped to do it. And so, you hand over all your money to someone to manage it for you, or you have your partner do it, or
Someone else, yeah.
your husband, your boyfriend, your uncle, or some other male figure in your life. Even a female figure in your life, maybe you have a female financial advisor. So I don't have anything against financial advisors. I have one. I'm in the middle of changing who I'm working with. But in terms of when you really start to understand money and you start to accumulate a certain amount of money, it no longer makes sense, in my view, to have all your eggs in one basket with like one person pulling the strings on what they're going to do with your money. And certainly if you have like an arm's length relationship with it, it's really curious to me. The more, again, going back to this conversation, the more I don't know, the more I don't know. When I built my wealth and, you know, kind of got my net worth to multiple millions, I didn't really consciously know about manifestation or like energy, or I just, there's a math to money that's just like compounding, right? Compounding is a mathematical formula. You put the money in and then it like that earns interest, and then the interest earns interest, and that earns interest, and then it compounds, and over time it balloons to a significant amount. And you don't have to be aligned with the stars. You don't have to be energetically clean. Like, I mean, there's nothing like that. We know of plenty of people in the world who have insane amounts of money who I wouldn't consider to be, you know, the purest vessel for kind of, you know,
Yeah.
energetic match to money. That now, if that is the way that someone calls in the money, that's amazing. But then the investing piece still needs to happen, and you can make investments through an energetic lens of, do I feel resonant with this founder, with this, the mission vision of this company? Is this, does this feel abundant to me? You can do that, and it still makes sense to be able to understand the term sheet or the fees that you're paying on like a venture capital investment, as an example. Like I nearly did not do this one that I spoke with you about just briefly that I made last week on this female founded VC firm, because when I looked at the fine print, the fees were higher than what I was comfortable with. And so we ended up having a conversation earlier this week, and then it all felt good. And so I just, you know, I signed the papers and off we go. But I think where people get themselves into trouble sometimes with money and investing is you lean too much on it. Investing to me is an art and a science. I think both are important
Yeah.
elements to cultivate and to be able to speak to. And so I'm just a huge advocate of women putting themselves in rooms and conversations where these open conversations about money and investing happen, and we dissect. This is what the real estate investment looks like. These are the terms. How do you compare it to this? This is what a venture capital looks like. This is what the angel, you know, this is what public markets look like, and markets are cyclical, and how is your portfolio constructed? And then what is the number for you that's enough? Like a lot of people also, I think, make the mistake of never really being satisfied with it's this idea of, yes, more is more, and more is always available, and more can be better, but like secure a minimum level of,
Mm.
you know, beyond this is just like magic. It's just bonus. It's a bonus. It's not needed, but I have my future like secured. And if I never work, if no money comes in for the rest of my life, like I'm good, right? I can live off of these investments, and that level of freedom uh is like you can't buy that. You can't put a price on it, I think is what I'm, you know. And so it's just important as we play this game of like continuing to reinvest in ourselves and continuing to double down on like I'm my best investment, and I'm, you know, like I'm expansive when I dress a certain way, I feel abundant when I drive a certain car, it allows me to magnetize new opportunities. That is 100% true. And then I just think it's smart to still then have um, investments, assets
Mm.
that generate a return, that pay you without you, you know, when you're with your kids on holiday, your assets are working for you. Like I always use this example of, I have thousands of people working while I was at the cabin in the mountains with my family for the Christmas holidays, right? Like thousands of people working. really hard to make me money because I own assets, right? Whereas the beautiful car that I own that's sitting in the parking lot, that's depreciating. It's actually not making me money, but I have other assets that you can't see that are
Those, yeah.
pretty moves, you know?
I have to highlight a few points right here as well. And like I mentioned, I think it's this for the third time, you are creating a new paradigm. And this paradigm is just really like mind blowing in my personal experience right here. Even just with seeing your live work online and having this conversation. This is the first conversation. It's just mind blowing because I think you are coming with this paradigm that it blends, and you have your vision, of course. It blends perfectly the masculine and the feminine. It blends the logistic, the quote unquote 3D real world, and also the manifestation, the being in alignment, the working in your energy, the not having resistance, the feeling safe in your body, the feeling safe with the investments. But I think it's really important to have both, because sometimes we only work in ourselves and we're doing the meditations, and excuse me, here we put crystals in our bra, whatever I think. But when it comes to taking, those actually are the ones, those practices, and I love those.
Mhm.
I'm a mindset coach. I love those. But those are helping you, that when that opportunity comes to you, or when something catches your attention, acting from a place of that feels good. Let me understand. Let me hire someone. Let me enter into this conversation. Let's see what I can do more with my money. Let's see what I can expand more. But you're coming from a place of feeling confident and clear, but you not only just remain there, you act. And I think that is the missing part, because when we go with someone like a third party, or maybe just your significant other, and we let him or let her to manage our money, we're doing ourselves a disservice, because we're, first of all, we can be able to bring it into the table, produce that with our life work, but we're not able to understand that part of ourselves of like, hey, let me learn this, let me enter into conversations, because as you mentioned, sometimes it's challenging, or we think that it's overwhelming, all those terms. But having someone like you, like I said, breaking those paradigms and blending those two worlds, I think immediately as a woman, I felt the excitement to know more. I feel the excitement instead of feeling like, oh, I don't know, or I don't know if it's gonna make sense if I'm asking this question. Maybe it's too dumb. Maybe she knows a lot. She has been working all her life, and this is gonna be my first investment, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You are with this your life work, you're really removing the old way of doing of investing in yourselves, investing in assets, and you're making this really accessible. And I think this is one of the the movements, and I don't call it even, it's a part of it, but it's also a movement that is gonna reflect in the next years. Like you mentioned, you're mentioning a company that is planning for to 2051, or like thing like that, is, and allows also to expand our mind, and
Yeah.
beyond of having 100K month, or $1 million month, or having that Bentley, or having, you name it.
Mhm.
You're bringing this into a new level, and I think that is so amazing for all the women, because like I said, I have conversations, and I have to be really honest, I have a interaction, I would say, back in 2021, and my experience was not too good, but I didn't remain there. I was like, what, well, I was not informed, whatever, and I have to work on myself, getting back trust within myself again, and being open to move again. So, and
Yeah.
I do believe that as a woman, when sometimes that's why we don't play into rooms, or into rooms, either because, like I mentioned again, the language, or we don't trust the fully ourselves or the people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're investing, it is really quite interesting. There's a very, I mean, energetically, there's a big difference between writing 100K, like doing 100K wire to a coach that you want to work with one-on-one as an example, versus doing 100K wire for, for a pre-seed startup that is not, doesn't have any revenue yet, right? But it could be like the next Uber or the next Canva or whatever, right? So it's how you recognize is another conversation, but there's very different ways of being, and your nervous system needs to manage those two it's not the same thing, right? And I think it's important to also just recognize when you're investing, like not everything is going to go right. You will lose money. That is part of investing. In the public markets, when the markets go down, you haven't lost money. It's not crystallized. The loss is not crystallized until you sell the stock or the underlying equity. In private markets, the company goes out of business, and then that's it. Like your money is gone, and and most startups do fail, and so you gotta play the power laws, and there's the conversations that I have with women around like how are you constructing your investment portfolio, and you have to. The women that I speak with are the women who are like, I fully see myself having a multi-deca $1 million net worth, right? And so if someone said, hey, I'm going to give you, $1 billion of portfolio, I want you to figure out how to invest that. Like, would you know what to do? But maybe we don't all aspire to $1 billion, but let's say we all aspire to having 10 million or $30 million of net worth plus.
Yeah.
The idea that you would put that all into stocks or all into real estate or all into crypto or all into is like, wouldn't be my recommendation to do that. And so then it would be on you to think about, how do I want, like, what kind of assets do I want to hold? What's my risk profile? What feels safe versus risky to me? Do I need this cash now or later? How do I want to structure it? And so these conversations, I think a lot of women just defer to someone else, which is so nonsensical to me because you're obviously really excellent at generating the money. So I think about like 3 pillars. You have to be able to generate the money. You have to be able to hold it, and then you have to be able to invest it. And a lot of people generate it and then they cycle through, like they just generate, they spend, generate, they spend. But then you don't have anything. If you stop generating, you don't have anything. There's no foundation. You're not building wealth. You're just, it's a vanity metric, which is nice and amazing and to be celebrated, because most people don't have the ability to generate cash like that. But then we're talking about legacy, we're talking about impact, we're talking about how you're making the world better, what things you're investing in, how are you shaping what the world gets to look like for yourself and your children. If all you're doing is cycling through cash, I would suggest it's a very shallow existence. Like there's another level. Like when we look up to men for the most part, but some women who are stewards of big wealth, they're doing something with it.
Yeah, that's
and so to put yourself into those rooms, those conversations of like, I aspire to be someone who has assets. I aspire to be someone who, creates a legacy. So it goes beyond, it's another level of deepening what we think around what wealth is.
Yeah, and even right now and during this conversation, you're allow me to think even bigger, because sometimes we, like you said, we're able to generate the money, or that for other people who say like it will be like mind blowing, but we can do like 50 or 20 or 100 or whatever. And we don't think about beyond, about, like you said, legacy, about investing, about or we think about just crypto or real estate, to be honest. To be honest with you.
Seems to be, because that's where I think narrative is these days is around crypto and around, real estate, and real estate is a thing, but it's the thing until it's not, right? It's the thing until it's not. And so I think the hardest thing is to build sustainable wealth over decades, not like, this stock went up or real estate did really well in 2023 or whatever the case may be. It's like,
Having a legacy.
you want to, number one rule, don't lose money, right? Don't lose money over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah, you're going to have blips, but this is also why I think it's really important for everyone to track their net worth, and at least twice a year to add up assets less your liabilities. Where are you at? Like, is that number trending up over years, over quarters, or is it flat? And if it's flat or declining, you're
Let's move, let's change things.
think about that. Yeah. And like, we're all gonna get old. Like, I think this is the other thing. And then longevity, and women live longer, and now we have the ability to live even longer. And if you're a high performer and you're healthy and you want to maximize, all aspects of your life,
Require
you
resources.
want to be working the way that you're working when you're 70 or 65 or 80, or do you want your assets to support the exact same lifestyle that you have now or better? I think that's what I'm doing. I'm making deposits for my future self. And my present self gets to still have a good time, but it's my future self who I'm thinking about. And that investing is, you need to have a future orientation, I think, to be a good investor. Because if you're wired for immediate gratification, then investing is going to be hard. It's going to feel like a sacrifice, as opposed to
building something with excitement, like in like that,
yeah,
helping your future the version of yourself to live in a way that feels right and it feels
yeah,
expansive.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, this conversation. I think we do require a second part of this podcast because it's just you have me in awe. I have to say, like I didn't. The only investments that I know is about crypto and, like I said, real estate, and I'm not feel ashamed about it, but it's like
Nothing to
right
be
now,
ashamed of.
right now it's amazing to have someone that it's opening my mind in ways that I was just like, wow, that exists. People thinking like that, and I think many of the listeners will agree that we'll do require the second part because, like I said, so many of my clients, and I don't know about the listeners, but many of us were women that were coaches, healers. We are with different ranges of income, of course, but we want to know more about this because this is really exciting. And like I said, not many women. Uh, I have to refrain my words. No one in the industry is doing what you're doing. No one in the industry is breaking this paradigm in the way that you're doing, bringing the feminine energy and the masculine, bringing the two worlds and putting this in an actional steps that we can just learn, learning the principles and apply them. And I think that is really, really important. And especially right now when more people are coming into in the business and online, we are creating more wealth, but we have to create that wealth, and not only cash, but wealth, like you mentioned, legacy.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, so you make all this money, that's great, wonderful. And then you can either hoard it, you can just hang on to it, which when you do that, like, people must realize that there's inflation, so that the money that you're holding today is going to be worth much less in 10, 20, 30 years. Energetically, that's also stagnant, right? So if you think about like stagnant water, it's just like not water that you want to be bathing in. You don't want to be walking in stagnant, like so there's that choice, or you can let it go again, you can let it flow out again, and then you release it, or you can multiply it.
Yeah.
And I think I like to multiply it. You
Oh,
know, that's what
I,
I mean, all you have to, it's all three, right? I invest in personal development, I invest in experiences and trips and things with my kids, but then I'm also super mindful, like every investment that I made in the last couple of weeks has been around multiplying my money. And there's such incredible power. Like that's when you spiral up, right? That's when you,
Growing, really. You
yeah,
create wealth and legacy. I think
yeah.
those, yeah. And
And
I,
it's also having, again, like creating the nervous system safety in your body of like, I don't need to log into my bank account and see $1 million of cash or $500,000 of cash sitting there. That might be the right answer for you if you have, multiple millions of dollars of assets working for you, because everything's relative. If you don't have assets working for you and you're sitting on all this cash, again, you're you're not stewarding it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true. Yes. And like, and when we're stepping into this paradigm of investing, we're not only, like you mentioned, creating security, safety within ourselves, but also within their future self, because we know that we got this, and not only ourselves, but also our families, and we're able to relax and allow ourselves to walk in a different way, in a way that we don't feel like we have to have this number on the screen of our bank account. We understand that there's this we have our assets working for us, and like you mentioned as well, we have this for the long run. It's as well. I think that remarcation is so genius that we don't have to immediately have the reward or what perceived reward in order to trust and understand that we are creating something that is going to serve us for the lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see it as, you're planting seeds, right? You're planting seeds with the anticipation of a harvest in the future. And that's really what we're doing. And when you know that you're going to get a good harvest, you stop making choices today from a place of scarcity, from a place of like this manic drive of like, I have to, beat my last month's whatever cash in, or, I have this high overhead and now I have to keep being on this treadmill because this is like, if I stop working, it stops coming in.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like a good place from which to flow and from which to create and from which to do your best work and from which to, that feels like a place to,
Those contracts,
like a hustle. It feels like a hustle energy, right? Of like, I gotta keep this going because I have these big expenses and I have to keep, so then I mean, there's so many tangents we can go down on, but again, just being really, one of the pieces of work that we do is around, what is a good life for you? Like, are you, if like truly, what are your values, and are you living in accordance with your values? And if what makes you happiest is getting up, training at the gym, going for a walk, hanging out with your kids, going for lunch with your girlfriends, chilling out, reading a book, a magazine, grabbing coffee, like going for dinner, like that's actually a very low cost lifestyle. But if what lights you up is, like renting the yacht and the private jet and all the things, that's great. And
but
then just be clear on like, are you willing to trade what it takes to get that? Right. So I'm not advocating lower your ambition or none of that, but just have it come from an aligned place so that you don't wake up one day and be like, okay, I don't have this, I don't have a close relationship, I don't have kids, I don't have, not that kids are like the be all end all, but just really clear on like, what is the trade-off that you're making for this lifestyle that you're living today? And is it would your future self be proud of you? Like when you're, 80, 90, 100, sitting on your deathbed in your rocking chair, you look back at like how you're living life today, does it feel good? And I think a lot of people um, chase more money, um, more things at the expense of happiness. And I do think that money is like a vitally important part of life to master. I'm not one of these people who are like, money is not important. I think it's vitally important. I think it's key. Everything that we have, everything that I get to enjoy, that I get to experience is because of money in a
Mm,
way, right? Like, yeah, could I still have an incredible time with
right.
my family in a shack? I'm sure I could. But I prefer to have it in a nice, cozy home, like it's so I think it's worth taking a moment to just reflect on how much money do you really need? What is a good life? What's the cost of that? And then making sure that you secure that number. And then everything beyond that is just like magic. It's gravy. It's a bonus. It's, you know, but secure that number. And when we talk about, compound interest and the time value of money, I'm sure we've all seen this, but the sooner you start, um, the more time compounding and the math has to work for you, right? The longer you wait, the more you have to do the heavy lifting yourself. The sooner you start, the more you can take advantage of leverage. And saying, oh, I should have started 20 years ago. It's like, yeah, but here we are. So let's start today, like start today. I just think it's really for women to secure their financial freedom is like critical. I could go on. Then you're not making choices about do you work this job or not? Do you pursue your passion or not? Do you do this job or not? Do you stay in this relationship?
Oh God, yeah.
Right? Like that's a whole other thing that um yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
goes both ways, right? There's lots of women who stay in relationships that don't support them, and then there are lots of women who pursue relationships that don't support them simply because of, you know,
Purity. Yeah.
person's financially well off and they can be supported in all the things, right? I mean, to each their own, not judging, even though it probably sounds like I am. I probably am. I mean, I'm not, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not for me. I prefer to, I just think it's important to have your own money and to know what to do with it.
Yeah. I think the
Not just
company.
money, investments, like your own assets. Because again, like if God forbid, and this is probably not a cool conversation to have in the energetic world, but with the energetic crowd, but like people get sick, divorce happens, like things happen, right? Like houses burn down, life happens, and so it's just good to know that you have
That
this like egg that is there and it's supporting you, and you can take a breather and recover and get better and rebuild, and you're not
pressure.
pressured to have to keep going when you are obviously not well.
Yeah. I think you illustrate so much in this conversation, Juliana, and all the listeners will really take the time as well as myself to dive into that number, because sometimes we get so caught into the month to month revenue, or money into the savings account, or we're not well informed or what we can do with our money and how that affect every single decision. Now you made me think about decisions about that I'm gonna take in the next 5 or 10 years because of the money as well. And I think with this new approach, you are open the door for many women to liberate themselves and to open their mind to new possibilities, and possibilities that really are want to help them not only to continue investing themselves, to not only to keep growing, but also to create that legacy that many of us we claim online that we desire, that we want.
Yeah.
Let's put action. And I love one phrase that you said, what are you willing to do to reach
Mm-hmm.
that
Trade
level?
for, yeah.
Or pray for? What are you willing to do? That doesn't mean that you're sacrificing, because when you are willing, it's no longer a sacrifice. You understand that it's part of your process, but you have to be really clear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, what was really, really clear is, and again, the reason that I kind of, took a detour, I guess, or not a detour, just there's a fork in the road, and I went this path with my kids, is I wanted to be present when they were little, and I wanted to be
Mm.
available, and I wanted to have flexibility, and I didn't want to have this manic rush in the morning and in the evenings. And the career I had was, which a lot of women have, it wasn't like I can't come in today because, my son is sick. It was like I have meetings and deliverables, and
Things like that.
I can't just take time off because things aren't like that wasn't, and I traveled a lot, and so I just feel super grateful that younger me had the vision and the foresight to invest so that I could, the mom me could make these choices. And a lot of women don't have that privilege. And I also don't think it's first of all, this idea of like, I want to be a millionaire, I think that's a really low bar. Um, it's not enough. It's not enough to live depends when you want to have the freedom to pause, right? If you're 70 and you have $1 million and you want to pause, great. If you're 40 or 50 and you have kids, it's not enough. And so the sooner I think
You
people
realize that?
think about that and realize that, the sooner you're like, oh, actually, I have a little bit of catching up to do. Let me focus on that. And let me also learn how to be happy with, my capital right now is going to these investments and I'm building my assets. And maybe it means that, I take 2 trips this year instead of 5.
That, yeah,
Like maybe you find other ways to, it's good for us, right? It's like fitness. I mean, the analogy that I use is, yes, would I like to eat all the things?
yeah.
I mean,
Like,
it would feel really good in the moment. And then next week, then you're like, oh, okay, I now have to do some extra work to get rid of that one night of like
but,
whatever it is that you
yeah,
indulged in. It's the
yeah,
same. It's very similar. I'm very into fitness as well. And I think there's lots of very close analogies between someone who has built a level of physique and someone who has a level of net worth. Your delayed gratification, making wise choices, keeping your goal in sight, not, yeah, lots of
yeah,
things.
yeah. And I love the fact that you mentioned about fitness. I used to compete on bodybuilding, so
Oh, so
well,
yeah. I mean, there's extremes. There's extremes to wealth building too, right? There's the extreme person who like has all the money but can't spend it, can't gift themselves the thing that they really truly desire because they're just so anchored in scarcity or in lack that it's just like you can't. Like, and that's also something to be looked at. And then, well, better. I mean, in bodybuilding, just that's the
another.
whole.
That's that is like you mentioned, it's it's the compound effect as well. The decisions that you take every single day, like sleeping,
Yeah,
nutrition, all those things,
yeah,
and
your
it will show
macros,
up.
your training. Yeah,
And it will show up even if it is one day. It will
yeah,
show up. I promise you. Like,
yeah,
but you have to be willing to say, I do want that. I want to walk on the stage or not. And
yeah.
that's simple. If you don't want,
Exactly it.
you want to just like you mentioned, that $1 million, if you want just to being healthy, that's okay. But if you
Yeah,
want to have something really like for you, not for nobody else,
yeah,
do something extreme or like you want to go really wild, there's an instructor and there's a mindset, of course, but that's an instructor and daily actions that you work towards. And it has to be a period of time. It's not going to happen in one day. Even if you do all the workouts or whatever, it's not going to happen in
yes,
one day. It
yeah.
will show up in 3, 6 months from now if you do the
Yeah,
work.
or yours sometimes, right? Like if you're really looking to like resculpt your physique and build some real muscle, like it can take a few years, right? So I think it's the same. It's like there's a saying in the fitness world that you can't out train a bad diet, right? Similarly, in wealth building, you can't out earn a bad spending habit.
Mm,
It's delusional to think, well, I'll just make more money. And when I make more money, I'll invest. And if you look back over the last, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, you would for sure be able to see that you are making more money, but you're still not investing, or you're still investing at the level that you were investing where you were earning 5 years ago, and the rest is going to spending. So it's this I think one of the things that was really helpful for me is I'm not really wired for, and this I think is just, a function of like when my parents left and all the things, I made some decisions unconsciously, but I've never been one to, like, I don't really care what people think. I mean, I care what people think, but I'm not like, oh, if I do this, maybe I'll get more likes, or maybe like I'm not like that. And
Yeah,
so that helps, right? Because you're not trying to keep up with anybody. It's like, I'm
yeah,
good. I do the things that I like to do. I spend money on the things that I like to spend money on. I live my life the way I want to live it. It's not to get like
views or
not
approval
for
or
external validation. Like I'm my own validation. And I think if you're wired the other way, it's probably I imagine it might be a little bit harder because you might be doing things that are costing you money because you think, you'll be perceived differently.
yeah. Oh God, this conversation, Juliana, like I said, we must to have the the second part because it's so deep. It really
Yeah.
deep, and it has so many pockets that we can go into. And I'm saying not gonna say that. I'm just gonna let's just throw all that. But it's just a conversation that we want to have as a woman in business because there's so many other things that we can just put our attention, even our resources. But why don't just take the time, like you mentioned, and really sit down and acknowledge what are the desires and what we're willing to do, and what are the ways or vehicles that can actually help us to achieve that in a real way.
Yeah. In a way that feels safe and that feels achievable and that feels fun and, that feels like it's aligned with who you are and how you want to, where you want to put your money. And um, yeah,
Yeah.
like it's fun. It really is. It's yeah, investing, the kind of investing that I do is so fun. Like it can be, on the verge of it being a little bit addictive. So again, like you have to then just be very mindful of my portfolio, like this amount of my wealth I'm putting into these types of things, and then the rest is in like safer things, and the rest is in like short term and long term, so that you're not like, oh my gosh, what if it all disappears? Like that would be not a smart way to invest, right? And I think everyone who, again, like nobody has a crystal ball. Like crypto could be the biggest thing in the world, right? Or it could not be. Like I
Yeah, that's true.
don't
Yeah.
know. And so if you're
We
all in on crypto, I would just invite you to, if you're 20 and you're all in, awesome. Like you got the rest of your life to recover. If you're 40 and you're all in, or 50, maybe think about like,
what do you
one of the
want?
things I say is, never invest more than you can afford to lose, right? In like one position. And so if you're like, hey, if my entire net worth like goes poof, I'm good. Like
Oh,
that's good. But if you're
yeah,
like, no,
that is
no,
the
I'm not
classic
kidding,
marketing.
then
And
maybe
that,
like,
yeah, and I think we have to have that the mindset and that skin on the game that if you're willing to, like you said, play and play all
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Juliana.
Thank you for having me.
This was amazing, and I know all the listeners will really appreciate that. And like I said, let's do podcast number 2 because we have so many things right here that I know people want to hear, want to understand, want to know, but I have limited time here. So
Yes.
thank you again,
Thank you.
Juliana.
Thank you
Thank
for having me. Appreciate it.
thank you.